The emergency beacon pierced through my monitoring station like a needle through soft flesh. I, Krell 9, seasoned traffic controller for the Galactic Education Transit Network, had seen my share of routine distress calls over my 20 cycles of service. Ships breaking down, minor hull breaches, the occasional fuel miscalculation. Nothing that ever made my secondary hearts skip a beat. This one was different. "Repeat that transmission," I barked into my comm unit, my tentacles already flying across the holographic display panels. The automated voice came through again, cold and mechanical. "Class Transport Vessel Delta 739. Catastrophic engine failure. Life support compromised. 42 juvenile passengers aboard. Species, Vrenaki, requesting immediate assistance. Vrenaki children, 42 of them." I felt my chromatic scales shift to a sickly yellow, the physical manifestation of pure dread. The Vrenaki were one of the most politically powerful species in the sector, their diplomatic reach extending across 17 systems. If something happened to those kids, if even one of them didn't make it home, there would be consequences that would ripple through administrations for generations. "Location?" I demanded, pulling up the sector map. "Grid quadrant Theta 99, drifting toward the Helios debris field." Oh, fantastic! The Helios debris field, a graveyard of shattered ships and forgotten wars, where even seasoned pilots feared to navigate. And these children were drifting straight into it. I ran the calculations. Our nearest rescue vessel was 14 standard hours away. The transport's life support would fail in 6. "Get me every available ship in that quadrant," I ordered my assistant, Mip Mip, a nervous little Quilnari who jumped at his own shadow. He chittered anxiously, his fur standing on end. "Sir, there's only one vessel within range. A small cargo hauler. Single operator. Human registry." Human? Of course it had to be a human. I had never actually met one of these creatures, but the stories... Oh, the stories that circulated through the stations. Humans were the newest addition to the galactic community, barely 2 generations since first contact. They were reckless, unpredictable, and possessed an alarming tendency to ignore clearly posted safety regulations. They treated danger like some kind of recreational activity. But they were all I had. "Patch me through," I said, resignation settling into my voice like sediment in still water. The connection crackled to life, and a female voice came through, casual and entirely too cheerful for someone floating through the void of space. "This is cargo hauler Wandering Star, Captain Emma Voss speaking. What can I do for you? Station control." Emma Voss. I made a mental note of the name, though I suspected it would be burned into my memory banks after today regardless. "Captain Voss, this is Krell 9, traffic control. We have a critical situation. A class transport with 42 juvenile Vrenaki aboard is experiencing catastrophic failure. They're drifting into the Helios debris field. You're the only vessel within rescue range." There was a pause, a long, stretching pause that made my primary heart sink. She was going to refuse. Of course she was going to refuse. What sane being would fly into that death trap for strangers? Then she laughed. Actually laughed. A bright, sharp sound that made no sense in the context of the conversation we were having. 42 kids? In the Helios field? Well, that's just perfect. Give me the coordinates. I blinked all 4 of my eyes in rapid succession. "Captain, I must stress the severity of this situation. The debris field is highly unstable. Navigation is extremely dangerous. Our rescue protocols recommend waiting for a properly equipped vessel with full shielding and multiple crew members." "Yeah, I'm sure your protocols are great," Emma said, and I could hear the grin in her voice. "But those protocols also mean those kids die cold and scared in about 6 hours. So, Coordinates. Now please. I transmitted the data, my manipulation appendages trembling slightly. Captain Voss, the Vranaki government will be monitoring this situation closely. These children represent multiple high-ranking families. Noted. Anything else I should know? The transport's emergency beacon indicates their oxygen recyclers are failing. They likely have contaminated air already. The younger ones will succumb first. Then I better move fast. Wandering star out. The connection severed, and I was left staring at my screens, wondering if I had just sent a human to her death, or if I was about to witness something that would make absolutely no sense according to every logical parameter I understood. Mip Mip scurried closer, his large eyes blinking rapidly. Sir, should we alert the Vranaki Council? Yes, I said slowly, and start preparing my resignation letter. We're either going to be heroes or the most reviled beings in the sector by day's end. The next 2 hours were agony. I watched Emma Voss's ship, a tiny blip on my sensors, racing toward the debris field at speeds that made my scales itch with anxiety. She was pushing her engines well past recommended safety limits, and I could see the heat signatures climbing into dangerous territory. Captain Voss, I transmitted, unable to help myself. Your engine temperature is reaching critical levels. I know. Her voice came back, strained but still carrying that inexplicable lightness. Turns out these old haulers don't appreciate being treated like racing vessels. Who knew? Perhaps you should reduce speed. Can't. Every minute counts, remember? Besides, she'll hold together. I've pushed her harder than this. That statement did not fill me with confidence. As her ship reached the outer edge of the debris field, my sensors went chaotic with interference. The Helios field was a nightmare of electromagnetic disturbances, radiation pockets, and free-floating wreckage the size of small moons. Visual contact with the transport, Emma reported, her voice now focused, professional. She's tumbling. Looks like they've lost attitude control along with everything else. I pulled up what data I could through the interference. The transport was indeed spinning slowly, helplessly, like a dying insect. Worse, it was less than half an hour from entering a particularly dense section of debris that would tear it apart. Captain, their trajectory will take them into grid section Theta 99 Delta within 28 minutes. That region is impassable. So I'll get them before then. Stand by. Stand by. As if I could do anything else. I watched, my respiratory slits flaring with stress, as Emma's ship began a complex series of maneuvers that seemed to defy basic physics. She was threading through gaps in the debris field that were barely larger than her vessel, cutting paths that no sane pilot would attempt. Mip Mip had given up any pretense of working and was now clutching my arm, his claws digging in just enough to be uncomfortable. I didn't have the heart to shake him off. How is she doing that? He whispered. I had no answer. Human reflexes were supposed to be relatively slow compared to most spacefaring species. Their visual processing was limited to a narrow spectrum. By all accounts, they shouldn't be capable of this kind of precision flying. Yet there she was, dancing through a field of death like it was a casual afternoon flight. I'm matching their rotation, Emma announced. This is going to be tricky. Their airlock is damaged. I'm reading atmosphere venting on their port side. I'll need to dock at the emergency hatch on the dorsal hull. Captain, that hatch is designed for evacuation only. It's not meant to support a docking procedure, especially not with a ship that's spinning. Good thing I'm not following the manual then. Hold on, I need to concentrate. The next 10 minutes aged me a full cycle. Through the grainy, interference-riddled visual feed, I watched Emma's ship approach the tumbling transport. She had to match not just its velocity and trajectory, but its rotation as well, all while avoiding debris and compensating for the gravitational anomalies that plagued this cursed region of space. It was impossible. It should have been impossible. Her ship kissed the transport's hull with a gentleness that seemed absurd given the circumstances. Magnetic clamps engaged, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought the stress would tear both vessels apart. Metal groaned, audible even through the audio feed, but the connection held. "Docked," Emma said, and I could hear her breathing hard. "Now comes the fun part." "The fun part?" I couldn't help but ask. "Yeah, getting 42 scared kids through an emergency hatch and into my cargo bay without anyone panicking and getting hurt. Should be interesting." The casual way she said it, as if she did this sort of thing every rotation, made something in my brain hurt. Over the next hour, I listened to Emma work. She spoke constantly, her voice carrying through my speakers with a warmth and steadiness that seemed designed to counteract fear. "Hi there, sweethearts. My name's Emma. I know you're all pretty scared right now, and that's okay. Being scared is normal when things go wrong. But I'm here to help. We're going to play a game, all right? I'm going to need you all to line up, oldest to youngest, and we're going to take turns climbing through this hatch here. It's like a tunnel, see? And on the other side is my ship, where there's plenty of air and water and even some snacks if you're interested." I pulled up the interior feed from the transport. The Vranaki children were in bad shape. Their blue-tinted skin had gone pale, their breathing labored from the contaminated air. Several of the youngest were already unconscious. Emma moved among them with an efficiency that spoke of training I hadn't anticipated. She prioritized the weakest first, carrying the unconscious ones through the connection tunnel herself. The older children she encouraged, coaxed, even joked with, somehow finding the right words to keep them calm and moving. "That's it, buddy. You're doing great. Just a little further. See? Not so bad. You're braver than you think." One child, a small male whose eyes were glazed with hypoxia, clutched at her suit. "Are we going to die?" Emma knelt down to his level, and even through the grainy feed, I could see the fierce determination in her expression. "Not today. I promise you, not today. Now come on, let's get you somewhere you can breathe properly." 20 minutes. That's how long it took her to evacuate all 42 children. 20 minutes of constant motion, encouragement, and what I was beginning to recognize as a particularly human brand of stubborn refusal to accept failure. "All passengers secured," Emma finally announced, her voice rough with exhaustion, initiating undocking procedures. "Captain, I'm reading structural stress in your cargo bay. You're exceeding weight capacity." "Yeah, well, I wasn't about to leave anyone behind to make the math work out. She'll hold." The magnetic clamps released with a shudder I could see in the telemetry. Emma's ship pulled away from the doomed transport just as a chunk of debris the size of a small building came tumbling through the field. It missed her stern section by less than 10 meters. "That was close," she muttered. "Captain Voss, your return trajectory takes you through the same debris field you entered through. In your current state, with your engines strained and your ship overloaded, I strongly recommend waiting for escort vessels." "Can't do that, Krell. These kids need medical attention now, not in 6 hours. Besides, what's life without a little excitement?" I was beginning to suspect that humans had a fundamentally different definition of excitement than the rest of us. The return flight was somehow worse than the approach. Emma's ship, heavy with passengers and running on engines that were definitely not designed for this kind of abuse, moved sluggishly through the debris field. Several times, collision seemed inevitable. Each time, through what I could only attribute to either incredible skill or supernatural intervention, she found a way through. When her ship finally cleared the debris field and entered open space, I realized I had been holding my breath for the better part of an hour. Mip Mip had actually passed out at some point and was lying in a small heap beside my console. Wandering Star, to Station Control, Emma's voice came through, now tinged with relief. Package delivered, more or less in one piece, requesting priority docking and immediate medical teams. Medical teams are standing by, Captain. Excellent work. Thanks. These kids are tough. A few of them are already perking up with clean air. The little ones are still out, but I think they'll be okay. As her ship approached the station, I pulled up every regulation, every protocol, every piece of documentation I could find on human behavior. I needed to understand what I had just witnessed. This hadn't been simple competence. This had been something that transcended training or experience. By the time Emma docked, word had spread through the station like wildfire. The Vrenaki Council had been alerted. News feeds were already picking up the story, and I had no fewer than 17 priority messages from various officials demanding updates. I left my station for the first time in 8 hours and made my way to the docking bay. I needed to see her, this human who had accomplished the impossible. The bay was chaos when I arrived. Medical teams swarmed Emma's ship, carefully extracting the Vrenaki children and rushing them to the medical center. Station personnel crowded the observation windows, everyone wanting to catch a glimpse of the rescue. And there, standing at the bottom of her ship's ramp, covered in sweat and looking like she hadn't slept in days, was Emma Voss. She was smaller than I expected. Humans were not large by galactic standards, but somehow the stories had made me imagine someone more physically imposing. Instead, I found a being of average height, with short, dark hair plastered to her forehead, and eyes that seemed too bright, too alert for someone who should have been collapsing from exhaustion. I approached slowly, suddenly unsure of what to say. How did one address someone who had just defied death with such casual grace? Emma saw me coming and straightened up, offering a tired smile. You must be Krell 9. Nice to finally put a face to the voice, or, well, faces? Do you have multiple faces? Sorry, still learning the whole multi-species thing. I am Krell 9, yes, I managed, my translator struggling to keep up with my churning thoughts. Captain Voss, what you did today was remarkable. I have worked in traffic control for 20 cycles, and I have never witnessed anything quite like that. She shrugged, an oddly endearing gesture. Just did what needed doing. Those kids deserved a chance to go home. You risked your life, your ship, everything, for strangers. Well, yeah. I mean, they were kids. What kind of person would I be if I didn't at least try? She paused, glancing back at her ship. Though I will admit, there were a few moments in there where I thought I might have bitten off more than I could chew. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted near the medical bay entrance. A group of Vrenaki officials had arrived, their elaborate robes swirling as they moved with urgent purpose. At their head was someone I recognized from countless diplomatic broadcasts, Council Elder Vrax, one of the most powerful figures in the sector. Emma tensed slightly beside me. Is that who I think it is? Yes, Elder Vrax. Brace yourself, Captain. The Vrenaki do not do gratitude quietly. What followed was something I would replay in my memory for years to come. Elder Vrax approached Emma with a solemnity that made the entire bay fall silent. His scales, a deep purple indicating his advanced age and status, caught the station lights as he stopped before her. Captain Emma Voss, he intoned, his voice carrying the weight of authority. You have saved the lives of 42 children today, including my youngest grandchild. Words cannot express the debt my people owe you. Emma looked genuinely uncomfortable with the attention. Elder Vrax, I just did what anyone would do. No, Vrax said firmly. What you did, very few would have attempted. fewer still would have succeeded. The Helios debris field has claimed many experienced pilots. Yet you, in a cargo hauler not designed for such maneuvers, accomplished what should have been impossible. He reached into his robes and produced something that made several onlookers gasp. It was a medallion of deep blue stone, carved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift in the light. This is the Star of Vren, the highest civilian honor my people can bestow. It has been awarded only 17 times in our recorded history. You are the 18th recipient, and the first human to ever receive this recognition. Emma stared at the medallion as Vrax placed it around her neck. I don't know what to say. Say nothing, Vrax replied gently. Just know that the Vrenaki people will remember this day. We will remember Emma Voss, the human who valued our children's lives above her own safety. This story will be taught to our young for generations to come. And it was. Oh, it absolutely was. Within hours, the story had spread across the sector. By the next day, it had reached the core systems. Emma Voss, the cargo hauler captain who saved 42 Vrenaki children from certain death, became an overnight sensation. News feeds couldn't get enough of it. The story had everything: danger, heroism, children in peril, and a happy ending. But more than that, it had something the galaxy hadn't quite seen before. It had a human demonstrating the very best qualities of humanity: courage, compassion, and an absolute refusal to give up on the innocent. I watched it all unfold from my station, still trying to process what I had witnessed. The official reports called it exceptional piloting and quick thinking. The news feeds called it heroism. The children, when they recovered enough to speak, called it a miracle. But I, who had listened to Emma's voice through the entire ordeal, who had watched her navigate impossible situations with determination and grace, I called it something else entirely. I called it human. 3 days after the rescue, I received a communication that made my scales turn an alarming shade of orange. It was from the Galactic Commerce Authority, specifically from Director Thane, a notoriously stern Cortaxian who had never, in his entire 40-cycle career, been known to express anything resembling approval or joy. Krell 9, his gravelly voice rumbled through my speakers. I need you to coordinate a press conference. Today, Station Main Atrium. Captain Emma Voss will be the primary speaker. I felt my secondary heart skip entirely. Director, with respect, Captain Voss is a civilian cargo hauler. She has no experience with media relations or diplomatic protocols. Perhaps someone from your office should handle this? Negative. The people want to hear from her. Every major news network in 3 sectors is demanding access. We've had inquiries from species I didn't even know that could communicate in standard tongue. She needs to speak, and you need to make it happen. The connection terminated before I could protest further. I found Emma in the station cantina, sitting alone at a corner table with what appeared to be her 3rd cup of that bitter beverage humans called coffee. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes suggesting she hadn't slept much since the rescue. Captain Voss, I approached cautiously. May I join you? She gestured to the empty seat across from her. Emma is fine, Krell. I think we're past formalities after everything. I settled into the chair, adjusting my lower appendages for comfort. Emma, then, I have been instructed to inform you that you are expected to give a press conference in approximately 4 hours. She nearly choked on her coffee. A what now? No, absolutely not. I'm not a public speaker. I haul cargo from point A to point B. That's the entire scope of my skill set. I am afraid the Commerce Authority, the Vrenaki Council, and approximately 700 million beings across the sector disagree with your assessment. Emma groaned, dropping her head into her hands. This is ridiculous. I just flew a ship through some rocks and picked up some kids. Why is everyone acting like I invented faster-than-light travel? Because, I said carefully, you did something most species consider suicidal. You succeeded where probability suggested failure was certain, and you did it all to save children who were not your own species, not your responsibility, and whose rescue offered you no tangible benefit. To many beings, that is more impressive than any technological achievement. She looked up at me, and I saw genuine confusion in her eyes. But that's just basic decency. You don't let kids die if you can prevent it. That's not heroism. That's just being a functional person. This, I realized, was the fundamental disconnect. What Emma considered basic decency, the rest of the galaxy considered exceptional courage. It was a perspective so uniquely human that I struggled to articulate it properly. Emma, most species are risk-averse by nature. We calculate probabilities, weigh outcomes, and generally choose self-preservation when faced with low-probability success scenarios. You entered a debris field that has a documented 67% fatality rate for experienced pilots. You did so in an under-equipped vessel, while overriding multiple safety systems. By any logical standard, you should have died. But I didn't, she said simply. No, you did not. And that is why everyone wants to hear from you. The press conference was a disaster in the most entertaining way possible. Director Thane had arranged the station's main atrium, a vast open space with viewing windows overlooking the docking bays. Holographic cameras floated everywhere, capturing every angle. Representatives from dozens of news organizations filled the seating area, their various appendages poised over recording devices. Emma stood at the podium, looking like she would rather be literally anywhere else. She wore a clean flight suit, the Star of Vren medallion prominent against the fabric. Her hair was still slightly damp from what I assumed was a hasty shower. Director Thane provided a brief introduction, his monotone voice somehow making her accomplishments sound like items on a grocery list. Then Emma was alone at the podium, facing a sea of beings from across the galaxy. "Hi," she started, and her voice cracked slightly. I'm Emma Voss, and apparently I'm supposed to talk about the rescue. So, yeah, that happened." A Quilnari reporter in the front row chittered excitedly, raising a paw. "Captain Voss, when you first received the distress call, what was your immediate thought?" Emma blinked. "Honestly, my first thought was that someone was having a really bad day, and I might be able to help make it slightly less bad." "Were you afraid?" This from a tall Xantharian, her crystalline features refracting the atrium lights. "Terrified," Emma admitted, and I saw several reporters lean forward. "I mean, the Helios field is no joke. I've heard the stories. But being scared doesn't mean you don't act. It just means you act carefully while your heart is trying to escape through your chest." A Cortaxian male, his tusks decorated with recording devices, spoke up next. "Many analysts are calling your piloting skills exceptional, perhaps even supernatural. How did you develop such abilities?" Emma actually laughed at that. "Supernatural? No, nothing like that. I learned to fly in the asteroid belts near Earth's colony stations. You either get good at threading tight spaces, or you become a permanent fixture in the debris. Plus, I might have spent a questionable amount of my youth racing modified shuttles through obstacle courses that were probably illegal." The reporters ate it up, her honesty, her casual demeanor, the way she deflected praise while simultaneously making the impossible sound merely difficult. It all played perfectly to an audience hungry for authenticity. "What about the children?" asked a Vrenaki journalist, her scales a respectful deep blue. "How did you manage to keep them calm during the evacuation?" Emma's expression softened. "Kids are resilient, you know? Way more than adults give them credit for. I just talked to them like they were people, not fragile things. Told them the truth about what we were doing, why we were doing it, and what I needed from them. Turns out, when you treat someone with respect and honesty, even if they're young and scared, they rise to the occasion. There are reports that you exceeded your ship's weight capacity by nearly 30% during the rescue," another reporter called out. "Were you aware of the risks?" "Of course I was aware," Emma said, her voice gaining an edge. "But here's the thing about risks. You can calculate them, prepare for them, mitigate them. What you can't do is let them paralyze you when lives are on the line. My ship could handle the extra weight, or it couldn't. Either way, I wasn't going to leave children behind to make the engineering specs happy." Director Thane, standing to the side, made a noise that might have been approval or indigestion. With Cortaxians, it was hard to tell. The questions continued for nearly an hour. Emma answered each one with the same straightforward honesty, never claiming to be more than she was, never pretending the rescue had been easy or safe. She talked about the moments of doubt, the close calls, the way her hands had shaken after docking with the transport. "You're making me sound way more impressive than I actually am," she said at one point. "I'm just a cargo hauler who happened to be in the right place at the right time and had a ship that could maybe, possibly reach those kids before it was too late." A young reporter, a species I didn't immediately recognize, asked the question that silenced the room. "Captain Voss, why did you do it? You had no obligation to those children. No one would have blamed you for refusing such a dangerous mission. So why?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, her eyes distant. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but clear. "My mother used to tell me that the measure of a person isn't what they do when people are watching or when there's a reward waiting. It's what they do when no one would know, when there's no benefit except knowing you tried. Those kids didn't know me. They didn't know humans. They were just scared and running out of time. If I had refused, if I had calculated the risks and decided my safety was more important than their lives, I could have lived with that decision legally. But I couldn't have lived with it morally. So I didn't refuse. Simple as that." The atrium was completely silent. I saw several reporters with moisture gathering in their optical organs, an emotional response that transcended species barriers. Then, the applause started. It began with the Vranaki journalist and spread like wildfire through the crowd. Within seconds, every being in that atrium was expressing approval in their species-specific way. Chittering, humming, clicking, clapping, a symphony of appreciation that made Emma look genuinely uncomfortable. Director Thane stepped forward, mercifully ending the conference. As the crowd dispersed, still buzzing with excitement, I made my way to Emma's side. "That was well handled," I told her. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. "That was awful. How do politicians do that for a living?" "Practice, I imagine. And significantly larger egos." Emma snorted. "Fair point." Over the next few days, the situation escalated in ways none of us could have predicted. The press conference footage went viral, spreading across communication networks faster than FTL travel. Emma's face appeared on news feeds everywhere. Her words were quoted, analyzed, and debated in academic circles. But more than that, something shifted in how humans were perceived across the galaxy. Before the rescue, humans were curiosities. They were the newcomers, the reckless species that had stumbled into galactic society with more enthusiasm than sense. They were tolerated, sometimes appreciated for their innovative thinking, but rarely taken seriously by the older, more established civilizations. Emma changed that. Suddenly, humans weren't just the new kids making noise in the corner. They were beings capable of extraordinary courage, of placing others above themselves, of succeeding through sheer determination when logic suggested failure. Emma became a symbol, not just of human capability, but of human character. The Vranaki Council issued a formal declaration naming Emma an honorary member of their species, a title that came with diplomatic privileges and access to Vranaki space that even most council members didn't possess. 3 other species extended similar offers within the week. Trade agreements that had been stalled for months suddenly moved forward, with several alien governments specifically citing Emma's actions as evidence that humans could be trusted as partners and allies. The Human Colonial Authority reported a 60% increase in application requests from alien species wanting to visit or work in human territories. Emma herself seemed utterly bewildered by all of it. "I saved some kids," she told me one evening as we sat in the observation lounge, watching ships come and go. "I didn't broker peace treaties or discover new technologies. I literally just did the decent thing." "And that," I said, "is precisely why it matters. Any species can develop technology or negotiate treaties. Those are learned skills. What you demonstrated was character, and character cannot be taught or programmed. It simply exists, or it does not." She was quiet for a moment, watching a large transport vessel execute its docking approach. "Do you think it's like this for all humans? Or am I just weird?" I considered the question carefully. "From what I have learned about your species, I believe you represent something that exists in all humans to varying degrees. An impulse toward compassion, a resistance to accepting defeat, a tendency to help even when helping is difficult or dangerous. Not all humans would have done what you did, just as not all members of any species would have. But the potential exists in your people in a way that seems more pronounced than in most others. That's either really flattering or kind of terrifying. Perhaps both." The consequences of Emma's fame continued to ripple outward. She received hundreds of job offers, from governments wanting to hire her as a pilot to corporations offering astronomical sums for her to represent their brands. She turned them all down, insisting she was perfectly happy hauling cargo. The Vranaki children recovered fully, thanks to the quick medical intervention Emma's rescue had enabled. Each family sent her personal messages of gratitude. Several of the older children recorded video testimonials describing how Emma had kept them calm, had made them feel safe even when everything was falling apart. One message in particular seemed to affect Emma deeply. It was from the youngest child who had been rescued, barely 4 cycles old by Vranaki standards. The child's parent had recorded them drawing a picture, a crude but enthusiastic rendering of Emma's ship surrounded by colorful stars. "For the nice lady who saved us," the child said in the video, holding up the drawing. "You are my hero." Emma watched that video 3 times before carefully saving it to her personal files. I noticed moisture in her eyes, that peculiar human emotional response. "You know what the craziest part is?" she said quietly. "I almost didn't respond to that distress call. I was behind schedule, low on fuel, and I remember thinking that someone else closer would probably handle it. I came so close to just continuing on my route." "But you did not." "No, I didn't. And now I keep thinking about what would have happened if I had made the other choice. Those kids, they'd just be gone. 42 futures erased, because I wanted to stay on schedule." "Yet you did not make that choice? When the moment came, your instincts pushed you toward action rather than inaction. That is not something to dismiss lightly." 2 weeks after the rescue, I received another communication from Director Thane. This time, however, his message was brief and decidedly unusual for someone of his typically rigid demeanor. Krell 9, the Galactic Council has requested Captain Voss's presence at the Central Assembly. They wish to present her with the Humanitarian Commendation, an honor typically reserved for beings who have demonstrated exceptional service to multiple species. Coordinate her transport and accompany her. She'll need someone she trusts in that environment. The Galactic Council, the central governing body representing over 300 species across 50 sectors. Emma was being summoned to the heart of galactic civilization. When I told her, she looked like she might actually faint. "No," she said firmly. "Absolutely not. I can't. I'm not qualified. I'll say something stupid and start an interstellar incident." "Emma, you have already spoken to hundreds of reporters without incident. You have handled every public appearance with grace and authenticity. The Council is not asking you to negotiate treaties or make policy decisions. They simply wish to honor you publicly. That's even worse. At least negotiating treaties has clear objectives. What am I supposed to do at a ceremony? Stand there, accept the commendation, say thank you, and try not to panic." She gave me a look that suggested my advice was less than helpful. The trip to the Central Assembly took 3 days via commercial transport. Emma spent most of that time pacing her cabin, practicing speeches she would never give, and consuming truly alarming quantities of coffee. When we finally arrived at the assembly station, a massive structure orbiting a triple-star system, Emma stopped at one of the viewing ports and just stared. "It's beautiful," she whispered. And it was. The station gleamed like a jewel against the backdrop of 3 suns, its architecture a blend of styles from dozens of civilizations. Ships of every conceivable design moved in carefully orchestrated patterns around it, a ballet of controlled chaos that somehow worked perfectly. The ceremony itself was held in the Grand Assembly Hall, a space so vast that weather patterns occasionally formed near the ceiling. Representatives from every council species filled the tiered seating, their various forms creating a tapestry of galactic diversity. Emma walked to the central platform with as much dignity as she could manage, which was admittedly quite a bit more than she seemed to think. The Star of Vren medallion caught the lights, drawing eyes from across the hall. Council Speaker Morvath, an ancient being whose species had been spacefaring before humans had even discovered fire, addressed the assembly. "We gather today to recognize an act of extraordinary courage and compassion. Captain Emma Voss, representing humanity, risked everything to save lives that were not her own, to protect children of a species she had never met, and to uphold the most fundamental principle that binds our civilizations together, that life is precious and worth protecting." The ceremony continued with speeches from various council members, each praising different aspects of Emma's actions. The Vrenaki representative spoke of gratitude. The safety commissioner spoke of courage. The human ambassador, a dignified woman named Catherine Mills, spoke of pride in representing a species capable of producing individuals like Emma. Then it was Emma's turn to speak. She approached the podium slowly, her hands clasped behind her back, in what I recognized as her nervous gesture. "Honored council members, representatives of the galactic community, I stand before you, feeling somewhat like a fraud." She paused as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Not because what I did wasn't real, but because everyone keeps acting like it was special. Where I come from, on Earth, we have a saying: see something, say something, do something. It means that when you witness a problem, you speak up, and then you take action. That's all I did. I saw children in danger. I called for help, and when I realized I was the only help available, I did something about it. She took a breath, her eyes scanning the vast assembly. I'm not a hero. I'm not exceptionally brave. I'm just a person who was in a position to help and chose to do so. And honestly, I think most beings, regardless of species, would have made the same choice if they had been in my position. The capacity for compassion, for courage, for putting others first, that's not unique to humans. It's not unique to any species. It's what connects all of us as thinking, feeling beings. Emma held up the commendation that Morvath had presented her, a stunning piece of artwork incorporating elements from dozens of worlds. I accept this honor, not for myself alone, but on behalf of everyone who has ever made the difficult choice to help when helping was hard. Every rescue worker who runs toward danger, every medical professional who treats the sick, every ordinary person who sees someone struggling and extends a hand. Those are the real heroes, and I hope my actions remind all of us to be a little braver, a little kinder, and a little more willing to take risks for each other. The applause that followed was deafening. I watched beings from across the galaxy stand in unison, expressing approval in hundreds of different ways, and I realized something profound. Emma had done more than save 42 children. She had reminded an entire galaxy of what they could be, what they should aspire to become. After the ceremony, as Emma and I made our way through the crowds of well-wishers and officials wanting to meet her, I noticed something interesting. People weren't just congratulating her. They were sharing their own stories, telling her about times they had helped others, times they had been helped, times they wished they had been braver. Emma listened to every story with genuine interest, treating each being with the same respect and warmth regardless of their status or species. It was, I thought, perhaps her greatest gift. This ability to see people as individuals worth her time and attention. We were preparing to leave the station when a young human male approached, wearing the uniform of a cargo apprentice. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting with a datapad. "Captain Voss, I'm sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to say thank you. I've been hauling cargo for 6 months, and it's been really hard. I kept thinking I made a mistake, that I should quit and find something easier. But after hearing about what you did, how you used your hauler to save lives, it reminded me that there's dignity in any work if you approach it with integrity. So, thank you. You helped me see my job differently." Emma smiled, that genuine warmth that seemed to put everyone at ease. "What's your name?" "Marcus, ma'am." "Well, Marcus, cargo hauling is honest work. You're moving things people need from where they are to where they're needed. That matters. Don't let anyone, including yourself, tell you otherwise. And hey, if you keep at it, maybe someday you'll be in a position to help someone too. You never know when your skills might make all the difference." The young man left looking like she had handed him the keys to the universe. "You're good at this," I observed, as we finally made it to our transport. "At what?" "Inspiring people without trying to. You have become a symbol, Emma, whether you intended to or not. The question now is what you do with that responsibility." She was quiet during the journey back to my station. I left her to her thoughts, understanding that processing fame was perhaps more challenging than navigating debris fields. When we arrived back at the station, Emma surprised me by asking if we could return to the observation lounge where we had talked previously. We sat in the same spots, watching the endless dance of ships against the stars. "I've been thinking," she said finally, "about what you said, about being a symbol. I don't want to be someone that people put on a pedestal, someone they think is better or braver than they could be. But maybe I can be an example, not of what humans are uniquely capable of, but of what anyone can do if they just try." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm going to keep hauling cargo because that's what I do and what I'm good at. But maybe I can also make myself available for situations like this, where someone needs help and conventional resources aren't enough. Not as some famous hero doing grand gestures, but just as someone with a ship and skills and a willingness to take calculated risks when the stakes justify it. I felt my chromatic scales shift to a pleased green. That sounds remarkably sensible and entirely in character for you. I'll still need to pay my bills, mind you. Heroism doesn't cover fuel costs. A practical consideration, I agreed. Perhaps the Commerce Authority could establish some kind of emergency response contract. Maybe. She paused, then grinned. Though honestly, after navigating the Helios field, normal cargo routes are going to seem pretty boring. Most beings would consider boring to be a feature, not a flaw. Yeah, well, I'm learning that humans might be wired a bit differently. 3 months after the rescue, I received a notification that made me laugh, a sound that startled Mip Mip so badly he fell off his perch. The Galactic Commerce Authority had established a new Rapid Response Division, specifically designed for emergency situations in remote areas. The division's flagship vessel was a specially modified cargo hauler, equipped with enhanced engines, medical facilities, and navigation systems designed for hazardous environments. The captain of that vessel, to absolutely no one's surprise, was Emma Voss. Her first mission under the new arrangement was assisting a research station that had lost power during a solar storm. Her second was recovering a damaged probe containing irreplaceable data about a newly discovered phenomenon. Her third was pulling a mining crew out of a collapsing asteroid. Each mission added to her legend, but more importantly, each mission proved that her success in the Helios field had not been luck or chance. Emma was genuinely, remarkably good at the impossible. But something else happened too. Something quieter, but perhaps more significant. Other pilots, inspired by Emma's example, began volunteering for the Rapid Response Division. Humans, certainly, but also Quilnari, Vrenaki, Cortaxians, and dozens of other species. They came with different ships, different skills, but the same fundamental willingness to help when help was needed. Emma had started something, a movement she never intended, a reminder that heroism was not about species or exceptional abilities, but about choice and character. I kept in contact with her, our professional relationship evolving into something resembling friendship. She would occasionally stop by my station between missions, always with a story about some narrow escape or unexpected complication that had somehow worked out. "You know what's funny?" she said during one such visit, nearly a year after the rescue that had changed everything. "I thought that saving those kids would be the highlight of my career, the one big thing I'd be remembered for. But it turns out it was just the beginning. Every mission since then has mattered just as much, just in different ways." Perhaps that is the real lesson, I suggested, that heroism is not a single moment, but a series of choices, each building upon the last. "When did you become a philosopher?" "I have always been a philosopher. You simply never asked." She laughed, that bright sound that had become familiar and welcome. Fair enough. The last time I saw Emma in person was 2 years after the initial rescue. She had stopped by the station before embarking on what she described as a particularly challenging mission, something involving a diplomatic vessel stranded near a black hole's event horizon. "That sounds unnecessarily dangerous," I told her. "Probably," she agreed cheerfully, "but they've got kids on that ship too, and apparently I have a reputation now." "Your reputation will not save you if you get pulled into a black hole." "True, but my ship's upgraded engines and my devastatingly good looks might do the trick." I watched her board her ship, That same modified hauler that had started everything, now covered in official insignia and carrying equipment I could barely understand. She waved from the cockpit, grinned that infuriating human grin, and launched into space with the casual confidence of someone who had made the impossible routine. The news reports came 3 days later. Emma had successfully extracted the diplomatic vessel, though the maneuver had required calculations that pushed both her ship and her crew to their absolute limits. The rescued diplomats praised her skill, her courage, and her apparently endless supply of terrible jokes that had kept everyone calm during the extraction. The Galaxy had indeed remembered Emma Voss, the cargo hauler who saved 42 children and reminded everyone what they could be. But more than that, the Galaxy had learned from her, had absorbed her example, and had become perhaps just slightly better for it. As for me, I continued my work at traffic control, coordinating ships and managing the endless flow of vessels through my sector. But whenever someone told me that a task was impossible, that the risks were too high, that success was improbable, I thought of Emma Voss flying through the Helios debris field with nothing but skill, determination, and 42 lives depending on her success. And I reminded them that impossible was just a word, and that sometimes, just sometimes, courage and compassion could overcome any calculation. After all, I had seen it happen. I had watched a human do the impossible, simply because someone needed help. And that, I decided, was a lesson worth remembering.